Now Democratic presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont speaks at a campaign rally at Ventura College in California. Primary voters in California are going to the polls on June 7th. Live Road to the White House coverage on C-SPAN 3.
We are holding rallies just like this up and down this state. And by the end of this campaign here in California, I am confident that we will have personally met and spoken to over 200,000 Californians. This is a grassroots campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the reason we are going to win here in California, and the reason we're going to win a general election, is the American people understand that given the crises facing our country, it is just too late for establishment politics or establishment economics. What the American people understand is that we have got to bring forth a political revolution. We have got to redefine what politics means in America. We need people from coast to coast standing up, fighting back, and demanding a government that represents all of us, not just the 1%. This campaign is going to win because we are doing something rather unusual in American politics. We are telling the truth. And here is the truth, that in our great nation today, we have a corrupt campaign finance system which is undermining American democracy. What democracy is supposed to be about, as everyone here knows, is one person, one vote. You got to vote, and you got to vote, and you got to vote. Democracy is not supposed to be about billionaires and super PACs buying elections. If we get elected, and I'm increasingly confident that we will, we are going to overturn this disastrous Supreme Court ruling on Citizens United. This campaign is going to win because we are telling the truth in the sense that today we have a rigged economy. And what a rigged economy is that for 30 years, the middle class of this country has been shrinking, and almost all new income and wealth today is going to the top 1%. What a rigged economy is about is the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, 1/10 of 1% owning almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. The rigged economy is when the 20 wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than the bottom 150 million Americans, half of our people. A rigged economy is when one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth than the bottom 42% of the American people. Anybody here work at a Walmart's? Okay, we got a few. And here is what's interesting about Walmart. Walmart, owned by the wealthiest family in America, pays wages that are so low that many of the people who work there have got to go on food stamps and Medicaid. Who pays for those food stamps and Medicaid? That's right. Working families of this country pay higher taxes in order to subsidize the wages paid by the wealthiest family in America. That is absurd. So I say to the Walton family, get off of welfare, pay your workers a living wage. But it is not just a corrupt campaign finance system. It's not just a rigged economy where today, here in California, my state of Vermont, people are working 2 or 3 jobs. Mama's working 40 hours, dad's working 40 hours, kids are working 40 hours. And at the end of all of that, 58% of all new income goes to the top 1%. You ready for a radical idea? Together, we are going to create an economy that works for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. But it's not just the corrupt campaign finance system that we have to change. It's not just the rigged economy. It is also a broken criminal justice system. Every American should be embarrassed by the fact that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. We are spending $80 billion a year to lock up 2.2 million people, disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native Americans. Our job is to understand why that is occurring and to change it. And my promise to you is that at the end of my first term as president, we will not have more people in jail than any other country. And one of the reasons that we have so many people in jail is that across this country, in inner cities, in African American and Latino neighborhoods, in rural areas, we have youth unemployment rates of 30, 40, 50%. Kids get out of high school, there are no jobs for them, and when kids hang out with no jobs, bad things can happen. And that is why I believe that we should be investing for our kids in jobs and education. Not in jails or incarceration. We should not forget that it costs more money to lock somebody up than to send them to the University of California. And when we talk about reforming a broken criminal justice system, we have got to take a look at local police departments all across this country. Now, I was a mayor in Burlington, Vermont for 8 years, and I worked closely with the police officers there, and I've worked with police officers all over this country. And the overwhelming majority of police officers are honest, hardworking, and have a very difficult job to do. But like any other public official, when a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. We have got to demilitarize local police departments. I do not want local police departments to be looking like occupying armies, intimidating the people in their community. We have got to make local police departments reflect the diversity of the communities they serve. We have got to end corporate ownership of prisons and detention centers. We have got to change law enforcement culture in this country so that the use of lethal force, shooting somebody, is the last response, not the first response. We have got to rethink the so-called war on drugs. Turns out, not widely known but true, turns out that over the last 30 years, millions of Americans have received police records because of possession of marijuana. And I want you to think about it. You're a 19-year-old kid, you got a police record, you go in and you're applying for a job, your employer asks you, hey, young man, you ever have a police record? Well, yes, sir, I did. Well, I got somebody else interested in that job. A lot of lives have been ruined because of possession of marijuana. And in addition to that, it turns out that this becomes a racial issue because studies indicate that blacks and whites do marijuana at about equal rates. Well, I don't know if I would cheer for that, but it's a fact. But here's what it also turns out. Blacks are 4 times more likely than whites to be arrested for doing marijuana. So what do? This is what I think we do. Number one, we understand that today the federal Controlled Substance Act lists marijuana as a Schedule I drug, the highest level, right next to heroin. Now, people can argue the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but no sane person believes that marijuana is equivalent to a killer drug like heroin. And that is why, if elected president, we will take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. Possession of marijuana should not be a federal crime, but as all of you know, the decision to legalize marijuana is a state issue, not a federal issue. 4 states in this country, plus Washington, D.C., have voted to legalize marijuana. As some of you may know, there will be an item on the ballot here in California in November calling for legalization. Now, I don't live here in California, but if I did, I would vote for that proposition. But while we're on the issue of drugs, let me just say this, and I think all of you know this. Right now, in my state, in New England, and I believe all over this country, we're looking at a horrific epidemic of opiate and heroin addiction. It is terrible. And what we are seeing every single day is people are overdosing on opiates or heroin, and they are dying. This is an issue that must be dealt with, but it must be dealt with intelligently. And in my view, the best way to address that issue is to understand that substance abuse and addiction should not be treated as a criminal issue. It should be treated as a health-related issue. And that means we need a revolution in this country in how we do mental health treatment. Right now, there are people who are addicted, who are strung out, who would like to get help, but there is no treatment available for them that they can afford. And in addition to that, what is true, although it is very scary, is that walking the streets of America today, right now, you got many thousands of people who are suicidal, and some are homicidal. And we all know about the terrible mass shootings that we have seen. In my view, what our approach should be is to say to anybody in America in mental health crisis, you can get the treatment you need today, not 6 months from now. This campaign is listening to working people. And what working people are telling me is they can't make it on $9, $10, or $11 an hour, which is why, in my view, we're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And when we talk about equitable wages, I know that every man here will stand with the women in opposition to the fact that today women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Today we will fight and we will bring about pay equity for women, equal pay for equal work. This campaign is also listening to women who are hearing Republicans all over this country, Donald Trump and the others, who are touting family values. And you all know what they mean by family values. What they mean is that no woman in Ventura, no woman in California, no woman in America should have the right to control her own body. We disagree. And by the way, when Republicans talk about family values, what they are also saying to our gay brothers and sisters that they should not have the right to get married, we disagree. This campaign is not listening to wealthy campaign contributors and their needs. We are listening to young people and their needs. And what young people are asking me, they're asking me a very simple but very important question. And that is, how is it that when they do exactly the right thing, when they go out and get the best education that they can, which is what we want all Americans to be able to do, why is it that they are ending up $30,000, $50,000, $70,000 in debt? Now, I grew up in a family that did not have a lot of money. My parents never went to college. But what I want to see in this country is that every child who studies hard, every child who takes school seriously and does well, I want to see that child be able to go to college regardless of the income of his or her family. Now here's the truth. 40, 50 years ago, people went out and they got a high school degree. And if you had a high school degree 40 or 50 years ago, you know what? Good chance you'd be able to go out and get a decent job and make it into the middle class. But the world, the economy, technology have changed over the last 40 years. And today, in many respects, a college degree is equivalent to what a high school degree was 40 years ago. And that is why I believe that today, when we talk about public education, it is not good enough to be talking about first grade through 12th grade. We must be talking about making public colleges and universities tuition free. Now, does anybody here honestly think that making public colleges and universities tuition-free is a radical idea? It really is not. The world has changed. Our educational system has got to change as well. And by the way, as many of you know, in countries like Germany and Scandinavia, college today is free. They are smart enough to invest and smart enough to know that investing in their young people is investing in the future of their country. It's a lesson we should learn. How many people here are dealing with student debt? Raise your hand. Whoa. Okay. Well, welcome to the club. We're talking about millions of people. And what, how much? How much? 120,000. I mean, how much? Okay. All right. What I'm hearing is 100,000, 220,000, 80,000. Frankly, think about it. What this campaign is trying to do is to get people to think outside of the box, to think outside of the options that corporate media often gives us. Ask yourself a simple question. We are living in a competitive global economy. We need the best educated workforce in the world. Why in God's name are we punishing people for getting an education? We should be rewarding them, not punishing them. And that is why I believe that with regard to student debt, anybody who is holding that debt should be able to refinance their loans at the lowest interest rates they can find. And that will mean a very significant reduction in student debt in this country. Now, my opponents and the establishment, they say, well, you know, Bernie, he's like Santa Claus. He's got white hair. He's given away all of this stuff, free tuition, reducing student debt. How are you going to pay for it, Bernie? Let me tell you exactly how we will pay for it. 8 years ago, after the greed, the recklessness, and illegal behavior on Wall Street helped bring this country into the worst economic recession since the 1930s, Congress, against my vote, bailed out Wall Street. Well, today, Wall Street is doing just fine. And I believe it is exactly appropriate to place a tax on Wall Street speculation. This country bailed out Wall Street. Now it is Wall Street's time to help the middle class of this country. And that tax would more than pay to make public colleges and universities tuition free and substantially lower student debt. This campaign is listening to people and communities whose voices and pain are not often heard. We are listening to the Latino community. There are 11 million undocumented people in this country. Many of them are living in the shadows and in fear. Many of them who are at work right now are being exploited because when you have no legal rights, you can't stand up to a boss who exploits you and cheats you on the job. And that is why, in my view, the time is long overdue for this country and for Congress to pass comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. Our immigration policy must be to unite families, not divide them. And if elected president, I will end the current deportation policies. And if Congress does not do its job, I will use all of the executive powers of the White House to do everything that I can. This campaign is listening to the African American community. And what the African American community is asking me absolutely correctly, how does it happen that we could spend trillions of dollars on a war in Iraq that we never should have gotten into, and yet supposedly we don't have the money to rebuild our crumbling inner cities throughout this country? Brothers and sisters, I have been all over this country in the last year. I was at Flint, Michigan, where children were poisoned because of lead in the water in a water system which was, to say the least, totally inadequate. I was in Detroit, Michigan, where the school system, the public school system, is on the verge of fiscal collapse. I was in Baltimore, Maryland, where tens of thousands of people are addicted to heroin and can't get the treatment that they need to get off of heroin. In my view, instead of rebuilding communities in Afghanistan, we should be rebuilding communities in the United States of America. This campaign is listening to a people who are in real pain, but that pain is almost never heard. And that is the Native American community. All of us know that the Native American people were lied to, they were cheated, and treaties they negotiated throughout our history have been broken. The Native American people have given us so much that we have a debt owed to them that we can never repay. And maybe the most important lesson that they have taught us, an incredibly profound lesson, is that as human beings, we are part of nature. We must live with nature. And if we continue to destroy nature, what we are doing is ultimately destroying ourselves. But despite all that the Native American people have given us, in Native American communities throughout this country, poverty and unemployment are sky high. Healthcare and education is not of the quality it should be. If elected president, we will fundamentally change our relationship to the Native American people. I am a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on the Environment, And let me tell you that I have listened and talked to scientists all over our country and all over the world. And they are virtually unanimous in telling us what people like Donald Trump and other Republicans refuse to acknowledge. And that is, climate change is real, it is caused by human activity, and as the people of California already know, it is causing devastating problems in our country and around the world. And what the scientists also tell us, if we do not get our act together now, a bad situation will become much worse. More drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean, more rising sea levels. We have a moral obligation as custodians of this planet. That is what we are. This is our planet. We are custodians of it. We must leave this planet. We must leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable to our children and future generations. What this campaign is about is getting people to think outside of the box, outside of the status quo, and to ask some questions that you don't hear asked in Congress and you don't hear discussed much in the corporate media. And one important question is, how does it happen that in our great country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, how does it happen that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people? Well, let me ask you all a question. How many people here today have no health insurance? Raise your hand. Wow. How many people here have high deductibles and high co-payments in their insurance policy? All right, what you're seeing is a failed health care system. The Affordable Care Act has done some good things, but it has not done enough. So let me be very honest with you and tell you what I have said many times, and it gets me criticized many times, but I'll say it again. And that is, in my view, health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. I want every American to be able to go to the doctor when they need to go to the doctor. We are losing thousands of people every single year who, by the time they get into a doctor's office, their situation has become terminal. That is unacceptable. Furthermore, not only today do we have so many people uninsured, 29 million, and more underinsured, every one of us is getting ripped off by the unconscionable greed of the pharmaceutical industry. That's right. There are people in America dying, and there are people getting much sicker than they should because they cannot afford the astronomical high prices that the drug industry is charging us today. It is crazy that 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford the medicine they need, and it is equally crazy that the top 5 drug companies last year made $50 billion in profit. If elected president, the drug companies will not continue ripping off the people of this country. Brothers and sisters, everybody here knows that real change in America has never taken place from the top on down, but always from the bottom on up. You know, it's never about some guy up there saying, oh, you know, I think it would be a good idea to do this or that. It always occurs throughout our history when people by the millions stand up and fight back and demand dignity. You all know that 100+ years ago, many workers in America were working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Kids of 12 years of age were working in factories, losing their fingers because they were around machinery they should not have been around. And what working people said 100+ years ago, they said, we're not animals, we're not beasts of burden, we're human beings, we want dignity, we're going to form trade unions and negotiate fair contracts. 150 years ago, amidst the abomination of slavery and racism, African Americans and their allies looked at the future, and they stood up and they fought back to end racism in America. And we will never know how many of these heroes and heroines were killed in that struggle, how many went to jail, how many were beaten, how many lost their jobs. But they had the courage to stand up and to demand a country which rid itself of racism and bigotry. People don't know this or have forgotten. 100 years ago, not a long time in human history, women in America did not have the right to vote or to get the jobs or education they wanted. What the establishment said to women, your job is to stay home and have babies. That's what you're supposed to do. But women said, you will not define us, we will define ourselves. And women and their male allies stood up, fought back, and said women in America will not be second-class citizens. If you think, not 100 years ago, think back 10 years ago. And if I were to tell you, well, you were to tell me 10 years ago if we were here, somebody jumps up and they say, you know, Bernie, I think that gay marriage will be legal in every state in this country by the year 2015. Person next to her would have said, you're crazy. There is too much bigotry, too much homophobia, it will not happen. But the gay community and their straight allies stood up, fought back, and said loudly and proudly that in America, people should have the right to love whoever they wanted, regardless their gender. If we were here 5 years ago, no time at all, and somebody would have jumped up and say, Bernie, you know, this $7.25 federal minimum wage is ridiculous. We've got to raise it to $15 an hour. Person next to him would have said, $15 an hour, you're crazy. You're dreaming, you're too radical, you're an extremist. Can't happen. You're asking for too much. But 3 years ago, workers in the fast food industry, in McDonald's, in Burger King, in Wendy's, they went out on strike. And they stood up and they told America they cannot make it on starvation wages. They need $15 an hour. And then a few years ago in Seattle, $15 an hour. In San Francisco, in Los Angeles, $15 an hour. In California, New York State, $15 an hour. What is my point? My point is that the establishment always wants you to believe that real change is impossible, that your dreams are so radical they cannot be achieved, and you've got to accept minor changes at best. And what this campaign is about is rejecting that entire approach. No, my Republican friends think we have to cut Social Security and benefits for veterans. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to increase Social Security and benefits for veterans. And what I am seeing all over this country, literally from coast to coast, from Maine to California, is people are beginning to understand that something is fundamentally wrong. They are asking themselves, why is it that I am working longer hours for lower wages and almost all new income and wealth is going to the top 1%? Why is it that we're seeing a proliferation of billionaires and yet half of the children in America in public schools are on free or reduced lunches? Why is it that kids are graduating school $90,000 or more in debt? Why is it that women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men? Why is it that we are the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee paid family and medical leave? Why are we the only country, major country, not to guarantee health care for all? Why is our infrastructure, our roads and our bridges collapsing at the same time as millions of people desperately need jobs? Why are we firing teachers when we need more teachers to better educate our children? Why haven't we been more aggressive in taking on the fossil fuel industry and transforming our energy system? Why do we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs? Why does Wall Street continue to rip off the American people every single day? Those are the questions that the American people are beginning to ask. And the answer is that when people come together by the millions, when people stand up and say that our government has got to represent all of us, not just a few, when this country brings about a political revolution so that real power rests in the hands of working families, not wealthy campaign contributors, that's when we bring real change to this country. On June 7th, there will be in California the most important primary in the whole nominating process. There are 475 delegates at stake here in California. What I have learned throughout this campaign is when voter turnout is high, when working people and young people come out in large numbers, we win. And if we can win here in California and win in the other 5 states that have primaries on June 7th, we're going to go marching into the Democratic Convention with enormous momentum. And I believe that we'll be marching out of that convention as the Democratic nominee. And if I am the Democratic nominee, Donald Trump is toast. So on June 7th, On June 7th here in California, let us see the largest voter turnout in Democratic primary history. Let this great state, one of the most progressive states in America, go on record in saying yes to the political revolution. Thank you all.